A man at the absolute peak of his success, the brilliant CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm, makes a choice that will echo through the halls of power and shatter the lives of everyone he knows. He decides to trade everything he built with his wife, their home, their history, their future, for a fleeting fantasy with a supermodel. He hands his pregnant wife divorce papers, believing he holds all the cards. What he doesn't know is that the quiet gentlewoman carrying his child is the daughter of the one man who can destroy him, completely the silent, invisible owner of his entire company. This isn't just a story about a breakup. It's about the catastrophic fallout when ambition collides with a secret that's been hiding in plain sight. The penthouse apartment felt less like a home and more like a showroom for a life well lived. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic, godlike view of downtown Chicago, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of fallen stars. This was the world William Sterling had built. At 34, he was the boy wonder CEO of Aura Innovations, a tech company whose sleek, intuitive smart home devices had become the gold standard for modern luxury. He was handsome, ruthless in the boardroom, and perpetually featured in magazines that chronicled the lives of the obscenely successful. His wife, Olivia Prescott, was the picture of understated grace. While William was all sharp angles and tailored Italian suits, Olivia was soft curves and warm, intelligent eyes. She was the anchor to his soaring ambition, the quiet force that turned their glass box in the sky into a sanctuary. And now, at 5 months pregnant, she radiated a serene joy that seemed to soften even the apartment's cold, minimalist edges. Tonight she was preparing a late dinner, a simple rosemary chicken that filled the air with a comforting aroma. William was late, as he often was. She hummed softly, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her stomach, a gesture that had become second nature. They'd already picked out a name, if it was a girl, Sophie. The chime of the private elevator announced his arrival. William stepped into the foyer, shrugging off his custom-tailored coat. He looked tired, but there was a strange electric tension in his posture. "You're late," Olivia said, her voice warm and without accusation. "Everything okay at the office?" "The usual fires," he replied, loosening his tie. He walked past her, avoiding her customary kiss, and poured himself a whiskey from the crystal decanter on the bar. 2 fingers neat, his evening ritual. "I saved you dinner," she said, motioning to the oven. "I'm not hungry." His voice was flat. He turned the amber liquid swirling in his glass, and the look on his face made the fine hairs on Olivia's arms stand up. The easy charisma was gone, replaced by a cold, transactional resolve she'd only ever seen him use on business rivals. "William, what is it?" she asked, her heart starting a low, anxious drumbeat. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes dark and unreadable. He placed the glass down with a decisive click and walked over to the black marble kitchen island. From his briefcase, he pulled out a slim manila folder and slid it across the polished surface. It stopped just inches from her hand. "I think we should talk, Olivia." She looked from his stony face to the folder. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. Inside was a thick stack of papers filled with dense legal jargon. But she didn't need to read it. The words at the top of the first page leaped out at her sharp and cruel as broken glass petition for dissolution of marriage. The scent of rosemary chicken suddenly felt cloying, suffocating. The entire beautiful, perfect world she had so carefully nurtured tilted violently on its axis. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The baby gave a small, insistent kick as if sensing its mother's distress. "It's a divorce settlement," William said, his tone devoid of any emotion. "I've been more than generous. There's a non-disclosure agreement, of course. My lawyers have arranged for everything. It will be clean and quiet." "Clean and quiet." She echoed the words, tasting like poison. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the city lights into a smear of indifferent glitter. "William, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." "The settlement has a substantial trust fund for the child," he said, as if discussing a line item in a budget report. "You'll both be taken care of for life. You won't have to worry about anything." He said it as if money was the only thing she could possibly be worried about. The betrayal was so immense, so sudden, it was like being plunged into ice water. She stared at him. This man she had loved, this man. She had built a life with the father of her unborn child, and saw a complete stranger. Why? The question was a raw, desperate plea. "Who is she?" For the first time, a flicker of something annoyance, impatience, crossed his face. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," she cried, her voice cracking. "I deserve to know why you are throwing us away." He let out a heavy sigh, the sigh of a man burdened by an unpleasant but necessary task. "Her name is Serafina Monet." The name landed like a physical blow. Serafina Monet. The impossibly beautiful supermodel who was the new face of Aura's global marketing campaign. Olivia had seen the billboards all over the city. Serafina draped over their latest smart hub, her eyes promising a world of sleek, effortless perfection. Olivia had even met her once at a company gala. She remembered Serafina's cool, dismissive glance, a look that had assessed and dismissed Olivia in a single predatory heartbeat. "You're leaving your pregnant wife for a billboard." The absurdity, the sheer cliché of it all was staggering. "Don't be dramatic, Olivia." He snapped his voice, turning sharp. "This is what's best. Serafina understands my world, my ambition. We're more aligned." Aligned. He spoke of love and marriage as if they were corporate synergies. The man she married, the one who'd whispered promises to her under the Tuscan sun on their honeymoon, was gone. In his place stood this cold, calculating machine. "I don't want your money, William," she said, her shock hardening into a sliver of defiance. "I want my husband." "That man doesn't exist anymore," he said, picking up his briefcase. "My lawyer, Mr. Davies, will be in touch with yours. I'll be staying at the Peninsula until this is finalized. I've had my things moved." And just like that, he turned and walked to the elevator, the doors sliding shut behind him, with a soft, final hiss. Olivia was left alone in the stunning penthouse, the divorce papers on the counter, the smell of a dinner for two in the air, and the silent, frantic beating of two hearts inside her chest. The gilded cage had become a prison, and its architect had just walked out, leaving her locked inside. The first few days were a blur of disbelief and gut-wrenching sorrow. Olivia moved through the vast, empty apartment, like a ghost, the silence amplifying the frantic monologue of questions in her head. How could I not have seen this? Was it all a lie? What did I do wrong? The home they had built together was now a mausoleum of their shared memories. Every photograph, every piece of furniture, was a testament to a life that had been a sham. Her best friend, a sharp-as-a-tack litigation lawyer named Jessica Barnes, was at her side within an hour of her tearful phone call. Jessica, with her fiery red hair and no-nonsense attitude, took one look at the divorce papers, and her expression hardened. "Generous? This isn't generosity, Liv. This is hush money." Jessica spat, scanning the document. "He's trying to buy your silence with a settlement that's a rounding error for him. And this NDA is ironclad. He wants to erase you." Olivia just shook her head, wrapping her arms around her stomach. "I don't understand. We were happy. We were planning the nursery." "He was planning his exit strategy." Jessica corrected her voice, softening as she put an arm around her friend. "Men like William Sterling don't just fall out of love. They make calculated business decisions. And right now, you and this baby are a liability to his brand." The word liability struck Olivia harder than anything else. She wasn't a wife, a partner, or the mother of his child. She was a problem to be managed. Within a week, the news broke. It wasn't a quiet announcement, but a carefully orchestrated media blitz. Page 6 TMZ and every gossip blog imaginable ran the same story, complete with high-resolution paparazzi photos of William and Serafina Monet leaving a Michelin star restaurant in New York. They were a stunning couple. He the powerful tech mogul, she the ethereal beauty. The narrative was clear. William Sterling had upgraded. The articles barely mentioned Olivia. When they did, she was referred to as his estranged wife, a footnote in the story of his glamorous new chapter. There was no mention of the pregnancy. William's PR team had done their job flawlessly. The humiliation was a physical weight. People she knew, friends of the couple, suddenly stopped returning her calls. Their social circle, she quickly realized, had never been hers. It was William's. She was just a temporary accessory. William's lawyer, a piranha named Gregory Davies, began a campaign of relentless pressure. He called daily, his tone oozing with condescending pity. "Mrs. Sterling," he'd begin. "My client is prepared to be very reasonable, but his patience is not infinite. We would all like to see this resolved amicably, for the sake of the child." The veiled threat was always there. Sign the papers, take the money, and disappear, or things would get ugly. They would drag her name through the mud, paint her as an unstable gold digger trying to trap a wealthy man. Jessica was her rock. "Don't you dare sign anything," she commanded. "We're going to fight this, not for his money, but for your dignity." But fighting felt impossible. Olivia felt fragile, exposed. The stress was taking a toll. Her doctor warned her to stay calm, that extreme anxiety wasn't good for the baby. So with a heavy heart, she made a decision. She couldn't stay in that penthouse, surrounded by ghosts. She packed a few suitcases, left the keys on the counter next to the now wilted flowers William had sent her last week, and walked away from the life she had known. She found a small two-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets that felt a world away from the cold glass tower downtown. It was modest, but it was hers. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of autonomy, however terrifying it was. It was there, surrounded by moving boxes, that she finally allowed herself to confront the biggest question of all her father. Marcus Prescott was a quiet, unassuming man who lived a simple life in rural Wisconsin. He'd been an engineer, or so he'd always told her. He was a widower, a devoted father who had raised Olivia on his own after her mother passed away when she was young. He valued hard work, integrity, and above all, privacy. He had never been impressed by William's wealth or status, only concerned with whether he made his daughter happy. Olivia had called him the day after William left. She'd told him they were separating, editing the story, to spare him the ugliest details. His voice had been full of concern. "Are you okay, Liv? Is the baby okay?" That was his only question. "We're fine, Dad. I'm fine." She'd lied, choking back a sob. "Whatever you need, you just tell me. You know that." She knew. But calling him to ask for help felt like admitting she had failed. William had been her choice, her life. She wanted to prove to herself more than anyone that she could stand on her own 2 feet even now. She had a master's degree in architectural history that she'd never used content to support William's career. Maybe it was time to change that. But as the weeks turned into a month, the reality of her situation sank in. William had frozen their joint accounts. The generous offer was contingent on her signing the NDA. Without it, she had nothing but the small savings account in her own name. She was a pregnant, soon-to-be single mother with a resume that had a 7-year gap on it. The final straw came in the form of a glossy magazine cover in the checkout line at the grocery store. It was Vanity Fair. On the cover, William and Serafina were posed in his penthouse, her penthouse. The headline read, "Power and Passion, Tech Visionary." William Sterling and supermodel Serafina Monet on building a new empire. Inside the article was a nauseating tribute to their cosmic connection and shared vision. William was quoted as saying, "For the first time in my life, I feel like I've met my true equal." He had erased her. In the story of his life, she was being written out, her entire existence redacted. As she stood there, the magazine trembling in her hands, a cold, hard resolve settled deep in her bones. Dignity was one thing, justice was another. He had not just left her. He had tried to annihilate her legacy, her very reality. That evening she sat in her small apartment, the city lights of a different, more humble Chicago outside her window. She picked up her phone. She didn't call her dad's personal number. Instead, she dialed a number she hadn't used in years, the direct line to a man named Mr. Harrington, her father's fiercely loyal and discreet personal attorney. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her voice steady and clear. "It's Olivia Prescott. I need to talk to you about my father's primary business interest, the one in Chicago. I believe it's called Aura Innovations." In the gleaming steel and glass headquarters of Aura Innovations, William Sterling was king. He strode through the open-plan office like a conquering hero, his employees parting before him like the Red Sea. His divorce was old news, his relationship with Serafina a source of public fascination. The company's stock was soaring, buoyed by the endless free publicity. He felt invincible. Serafina was a constant presence at his side. She'd developed a sudden passionate interest in business, offering unsolicited opinions on marketing, branding, and even product design. "Darling, the Aura brand isn't just about technology," she'd purred one evening, tracing the lapel of his suit. "It's about lifestyle, aspiration. We should be sponsoring Art Basel, the Monaco Grand Prix. We need to be seen in the right places with the right people." William, blinded by her beauty and the validation she offered, readily agreed. He began pouring company money into vanity projects, sponsoring Serafina's favorite designer at Paris Fashion Week, a multi-million-dollar Aura Experience yacht party at Cannes, and a new ill-conceived line of Aura by Serafina, designer smart mirrors, that were hemorrhaging money in R&D. This shift did not go unnoticed by David Chen, Aura's meticulous and unassuming chief financial officer. David had been with the company since its early days. He was a numbers man, a pragmatist who believed in fiscal responsibility and sustainable growth. He watched the new expenditures with mounting alarm. He requested a meeting with William, armed with spreadsheets and projections that painted a grim picture. "William, the marketing spend is up 300% this quarter," David said, pointing to a graph showing a steep upward curve. The ROI on these lifestyle events is negligible. We're burning through our cash reserves at an unsustainable rate. The board is going to have questions." William waved a dismissive hand. "The board answers to me, David. You're thinking like an accountant. I'm thinking about brand equity. We're not just selling gadgets anymore. We're selling a dream. This dream is costing us a fortune." David pressed his anxiety palpable. "And this Serafina mirror project, the preliminary data shows almost no market demand. It's a folly." "It's an innovation," William corrected, his voice laced with irritation. "Serafina has her finger on the pulse of the luxury market. You need to have a little more vision." But David's concerns weren't just about spending. He was the one who had to communicate with their majority shareholder, a notoriously private investment firm known only as MP Holdings. For years, MP Holdings had been a silent partner. They owned 60% of the company, a controlling interest, but had never once interfered with William's management. Their instructions, delivered through a small, prestigious law firm in Milwaukee, had always been the same: run the company as if it were your own. We trust your judgment. Lately, however, the inquiries from the law firm representing MP Holdings had become more frequent and pointed. They were requesting detailed breakdowns of expenditures, minutes from executive meetings, and projections for the next 2 fiscal years. The tone was no longer passive, it was forensic. "I'm getting daily emails from Harrington's office," David told William, looking troubled. "They're asking about the new marketing budget. They want a full P&L on the Serafina mirror project. They've never been this involved." William scoffed. "They're probably just some faceless fund managers getting nervous. Send them the reports. They'll be dazzled by the press we're getting." He truly believed it. In his mind, the company was his creation, his genius made manifest. MP Holdings was just old money, lucky to have gotten in on the ground floor. William Sterling was the engine. He was Aura Innovations. Meanwhile, in a quiet law office in Milwaukee, Mr. Harrington was compiling a dossier. It was thick, detailed, and damning. It contained David Chen's concerned emails, every extravagant expense report, every negative market analysis of William's pet projects. And it also contained a signed affidavit from Olivia Prescott, detailing the emotional distress and coercion she had been subjected to, along with a medical report from her obstetrician on the physical effects of that stress. Mr. Harrington was a calm, grandfatherly man with kind eyes that missed nothing. He'd known Olivia since she was a little girl. He had worked for her father for over 40 years, and his loyalty was absolute. "He's arrogant, Marcus," Harrington said over a secure phone line to his employer. "He's treating the company like his personal piggy bank. The CFO is practically screaming for help, but Sterling won't listen." On the other end of the line, Marcus Prescott's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of immense power. "And Olivia, she's strong, stronger than he ever gave her credit for. She's focusing on the baby, but she's ready. She understands what needs to be done." There was a long pause. Marcus was not a man given to rash decisions. He had watched William Sterling for years, believing he had found a brilliant, ambitious young man to steward the company he had painstakingly built from a small workshop in his garage into a global powerhouse. He had given William autonomy, wanting to see what he would build free from interference. He'd seen William's ambition as an asset. Now he saw it as a cancer. "The man I entrusted with my company is threatening the well-being of my daughter and my grandchild," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerously low temperature. "He has mistaken my silence for absence. It's time to remind him who owns the board." Harrington knew what this meant. "I'll make the arrangements," he said. "I will call an emergency meeting of the board of directors for next Monday." "Good," Marcus replied. "And Harrington, make sure Mr. Sterling's personal lawyer is present. I want him to have counsel when his world comes to an end." The storm had gathered. The pressure was dropping. And in his glass tower in Chicago, William Sterling, utterly oblivious, was busy approving the designs for a diamond-encrusted smart mirror. Convinced the thunder he was hearing was the sound of applause. The summons for the emergency board meeting arrived on a Friday afternoon via a curt, formal email from Mr. Harrington's office. The stated purpose was vague: to discuss urgent matters of corporate governance and fiscal strategy at the behest of the majority shareholder. William read the email with a flash of annoyance, not alarm. He saw it as a bureaucratic hassle, a box-ticking exercise demanded by some nervous investors. He forwarded it to David Chen with a one-line directive: "Get all the recent positive press clippings and sales forecasts ready. We'll put their minds at ease." He spent the weekend with Serafina in the Hamptons, chartering a yacht and attending an exclusive white party. He was the center of attention, the titan of tech with a supermodel on his arm. The meeting on Monday was a distant nuisance, a small cloud in his otherwise perfect blue sky. On Monday morning, he arrived at the Aura headquarters, feeling untouchable. He wore a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than his assistant's car, his confidence radiating from him like a physical force. He'd asked his lawyer, Gregory Davies, to join him more as a power play than a necessity, a signal to the board that he was not to be trifled with. "Just a formality, Greg," William said, as they rode the elevator up to the 50th floor boardroom. "We'll show them a few hockey stick growth charts, flash a few magazine covers, and we'll be out of there in an hour." Davies nodded, his expression smug. "They'd be fools to challenge you. You are the company." They entered the boardroom. It was a cathedral of corporate power with a long mahogany table and a wall of glass overlooking the city. The other 4 board members were already seated. They were older, seasoned executives who had always been deferential to William. Today, however, they looked tense. They offered tight, unsmiling nods as William took his seat at the head of the table. David Chen sat further down, looking pale and avoiding William's gaze. There was one empty chair. The seat directly to the right of William's, reserved for the representative of the majority shareholder. It had remained empty for every board meeting William had ever chaired. "All right, let's get this started." William began, his tone brisk and impatient. "I understand MP Holdings has some concerns. David has prepared a presentation that should address any—" He was cut off by the sound of the boardroom door opening. A man stepped in, followed by Mr. Harrington. The man was in his late 60s with a quiet demeanor and silvering hair. He wore a simple, well-made, but unremarkable grey suit. He looked more like a retired college professor than a corporate raider. William didn't recognize him. "I apologize for my tardiness," the man said, his voice calm and measured. He walked over to the empty chair and sat down. Mr. Harrington took a seat behind him. William stared at him, irritated by the interruption. "And you are?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. The man looked directly at William, his gaze level and piercing. The kindness in his eyes that Olivia knew so well was gone, replaced by something ancient and unyielding like granite. "My name is Marcus Prescott," he said simply. "I own MP Holdings." The name hit the room like a sonic boom. William's condescending smile froze on his face. Prescott. It couldn't be. He looked at the man's face. Really looked at it for the first time, and saw the faint, unmistakable echo of Olivia in the line of his jaw, the shape of his eyes. A cold dread, slick and oily, began to crawl up his spine. David Chen looked like he was going to be physically ill. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Gregory Davies, the shark-like lawyer, was speechless, his mouth slightly agape. "Olivia's father," William stammered the words, feeling like ash in his mouth. "That is my secondary role here today," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "My primary role is that of the man who owns 60% of this company, the man who personally approved the seed funding that took you from a garage tinkerer to a CEO, the man whose trust you have used, abused, and betrayed." Marcus gestured to Mr. Hong. Harrington, who began distributing thick, spiral-bound folders to everyone at the table, including a stunned William and his lawyer. "Inside that folder," Marcus continued, his voice as cold and sharp as ice, "you will find a detailed accounting of your tenure as CEO for the past 6 months. You will find the exorbitant expenditures on what can only be described as vanity projects. You will find the internal projections from your own CFO, Mr. Chen, projections you willfully ignored, warning of the catastrophic cash burn. You will find market research demonstrating that the Serafina mirror is a product with no viable consumer base, a multi-million-dollar folly designed to stroke your own ego and that of your mistress." Every word was a hammer blow. William fumbled through the pages, seeing his own extravagant decisions laid bare in the unforgiving language of finance. He saw David Chen's ignored warnings, the damning charts, the abysmal focus group reports. This is just aggressive growth strategy." William sputtered, his usual glib confidence deserting him. "Brand building. Do not insult my intelligence," Marcus snapped, his voice cracking like a whip. "You have treated this company's assets as your personal slush fund. You have jeopardized the financial health of this enterprise and the livelihoods of its 1,200 employees. That is a breach of your fiduciary duty. That is grounds for dismissal." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the suffocatingly silent room. "But that is only the business side of things. Then there is the personal." Marcus's gaze bored into William, and for the first time in his life, William Sterling felt true abject fear. "You married my daughter. You stood before me and promised to love and protect her, and you discarded her in the middle of her pregnancy with the callousness one might show to an outdated piece of software. You subjected her to emotional cruelty and public humiliation, believing that your money and your power made you untouchable." He leaned forward slightly. "You were wrong. Your power was never your own. It was a loan, and I am here today to call it in." Marcus looked away from William, addressing the rest of the board. "I am calling for a vote of no confidence in CEO William Sterling, effective immediately. All those in favor?" One by one, the hands of the other 4 board members went up without hesitation. David Chen slowly, solemnly raised his as well. It was a unanimous decision. William stared dumbfounded. His world, his kingdom, the entire universe that revolved around him had just been snuffed out in less than 10 minutes. "You can't do this," he whispered, a desperate, pathetic plea. Marcus Prescott stood up, his authority absolute. "I already have. Mr. Harrington will provide you with the details of your termination. Your security access has been revoked. A security detail will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings, and then they will escort you from the premises." He looked down at William, a fallen king, at the head of a table that was no longer his. "You told my daughter that the man she married no longer exists," Marcus said, his voice low and final. As of this moment, the CEO of Aura Innovations no longer exists either. The fallout was immediate and brutal. As William sat frozen in his chair, his mind struggling to process the cataclysm that had just occurred, his phone buzzed on the table. It was a news alert from the Wall Street Journal. William Sterling, abruptly ousted as CEO of Aura Innovations, founder's silent partner, Marcus Prescott, takes control. The story had been pre-written, ready to be published the second the vote was cast. Marcus had orchestrated a perfect corporate execution. 2 grim-faced security guards, men who had previously nodded to him with deference, entered the boardroom. "Mr. Sterling, if you'll come with us." The walk to his office was a walk of shame. The open-plan workspace, once a sea of admiring faces, was now filled with employees who stared at their screens, pretending not to notice the public execution of their former leader. The whispers followed him like a trail of smoke. In his glass-walled corner office, one of the guards handed him a cardboard box. "Personal effects only, sir." He numbly packed his desk, a framed photo of him and Olivia from their wedding, a photo he'd forgotten was even there, a stupid paperweight from a tech conference, his favorite pen. Every object was a relic from a life that had just been vaporized. As he was escorted towards the elevators, he saw David Chen. The CFO wouldn't meet his eye. "David," William said, his voice raspy. "You—" "I warned you, William," David said quietly, his face full of regret. "I told you this was coming. You wouldn't listen." The final humiliation was having his security badge deactivated before his very eyes. The guard swiped it. The light flashed red, and a part of his identity was stripped away. He was led out of the building, not through the grand main entrance, but through a sterile service exit into a back alley. The cold Chicago wind hit him a stark contrast to the climate-controlled air of his former empire. He stood there for a moment, clutching his small box of belongings, a captain unceremoniously thrown off his own ship. His first instinct was to call Serafina. He needed her. He needed her to tell him this was all a mistake, that his power wasn't gone. He fumbled for his phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and breathless. "William, darling, I was just about to call you. You will not believe who I'm having lunch with. It's the casting director for the new James Bond film, Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. "Something's happened." "Oh." The brightness in her voice dimmed slightly. "Is it about the mirror launch? Did you get the diamond prototype approved?" "No, I've been fired." The words felt foreign, impossible. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the distant city traffic. "Fired," she finally said, her voice completely changed. It was flat cold, stripped of all its practiced warmth. "What do you mean, fired?" "Olivia's father. He owns the company. He owns everything. He just fired me." Another pause. He could hear the clinking of cutlery in the background, the murmur of a restaurant. He could almost picture her weighing her options, calculating her next move with the same ruthless efficiency he had once admired. "Listen, William," she said, her voice now distant and clipped. "I'm in the middle of something very important right now. My agent is calling. I have to go." "Sarah, wait." The line went dead. He stood there, phone in hand, staring at the brick wall of the alley. She hadn't even said she was sorry. There was no sympathy, no support. The cosmic connection had been severed the moment his net worth plummeted. He had been a stepping stone, and she had just stepped off him onto the next one. He called his lawyer, Gregory Davies. "What the hell do we do, Greg? Can they do this?" Davies' voice was strained, the usual arrogant bluster gone. His ownership is legitimate, William. I've had my team looking into MP Holdings for the past hour. It's an ironclad private trust. He's the sole beneficiary. There's nothing we can do. He has absolute control. The lawyer cleared his throat. William, regarding my retainer, given the change in your financial circumstances, we'll need to discuss a new payment structure going forward. Even his legal shark was jumping ship. Desperate and utterly alone, William took a cab to the Peninsula Hotel, the luxurious suite he now called home. As he walked through the opulent lobby, the concierge gave him a look of strained pity. "Mr. Sterling, a message for you," he said, handing him a crisp hotel envelope. Inside was a letter from the hotel management, politely informing him that the corporate account used to pay for his suite had been suspended effective immediately. They would require a personal credit card to cover any further nights. His corporate cards, he soon discovered, had all been cancelled. He tried his personal American Express black card. Declined. A sick realization dawned on him. His entire liquid worth was tied up in company stock and bonuses assets that Marcus Prescott could and likely would freeze or claw back due to his breach of fiduciary duty. The unraveling was swift and total. Within a few hours he had gone from a titan of industry to a man with a box of office supplies, a cancelled credit card and a dead phone line, to a lover who had already forgotten his name. He was a ghost haunting the lobbies of a life he no longer owned. He had traded his wife, his child, and his integrity for a world of glittering surfaces, and he had just discovered that underneath there was nothing at all. While William's world imploded, Olivia's was quietly, carefully being rebuilt. The day after the board meeting, her father called her. There was no triumphant, "I told you so," in his voice, only gentle concern. "It's done, Liv," he said simply. "He's gone." Olivia felt a complex wave of emotions, relief, certainly, but also a strange, hollow sadness for the man he used to be, for the love she thought they had. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me for protecting my family," he said. "Now the real work begins. The company is in disarray. It needs stable leadership to reassure the employees and the market." "Are you going to run it?" she asked. "No," he said firmly. "I'm an engineer, not a CEO. I build things, I don't run them. Besides, this company's future isn't my legacy to define anymore. It's yours." Olivia was stunned. "Mine, Dad. I don't know the first thing about running a tech company." "You have a master's in architectural history," he reminded her. "You understand structure design and how people live and interact with the spaces around them. That's exactly what Aura Innovations does. It designs the architecture of the modern home. You have the vision William lost sight of. He got obsessed with celebrity and luxury. You understand the home part of smart home." He continued, his voice full of a pride she had not heard in a long time. "I'm appointing an interim CEO, a trusted colleague, to handle the day-to-day. But I'm creating a new position. I want you to be the chairwoman of the board of directors. You won't run the company, you will guide it. You will set its moral compass and its long-term vision. It's your birthright, Olivia, and it will be your child's legacy." It was a staggering proposition. For years she had willingly taken a back seat, believing her role was to support William's dream. The idea of having her own, of wielding that kind of influence, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But as she placed a hand on her now prominently rounded belly, she felt a surge of purpose. She wasn't just Olivia Prescott anymore. She was Sophie's mother. She had to build a world she wanted her daughter to grow up in. "Okay, Dad. she said, her voice filled with a newfound strength. "I'll do it." Her first act as chairwoman was to call an all-hands meeting at the company. Standing before the 1,200 employees, her pregnancy a quiet symbol of the future, she was a stark contrast to William's slick corporate persona. She spoke not of synergy or disruption, but of values. Aura Innovations was founded on a simple idea to make people's lives better and more connected. She said, her voice clear and steady. Somewhere along the way, we started chasing glamour instead of purpose. We started selling a lifestyle instead of solving problems. That ends today. Our focus is returning to our core mission, creating beautiful, intuitive technology that strengthens the family and the home. She announced her first major decision, the Aura by Serafina Mirror project, was officially cancelled. The R&D budget would be reallocated to 2 new initiatives. First, a new division focused on accessibility tech, designing products for the elderly and people with disabilities. Second, a charitable foundation funded by 10% of the company's annual profits, dedicated to providing safe housing for families in need. A wave of applause, genuine and heartfelt, swept through the auditorium. The employees who had been nervous and uncertain about the company's future saw in Olivia not just a new leader, but a return to the company's soul. She received a standing ovation. David Chen watched from the wings, a look of profound respect on his face. He had a leader he could believe in again. Over the next few months, Olivia blossomed in her new role. She was a natural. She listened more than she talked. She valued her team's expertise, and she led with a quiet empathy that inspired fierce loyalty. She moved the company out of the ostentatious downtown skyscraper and into a modern, collaborative campus in a revitalized industrial district, a space designed for innovation, not just for showcasing a view. 2 months later, Olivia gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. She named her Sophie. As she held her daughter in her arms, she looked around the warm, sunlit room in her Lincoln Park home, a home she had bought with her own salary, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. She was not a wife who had been discarded. She was a mother, a leader, and the architect of her own life. She was building a different kind of empire, one founded not on ego and greed, but on integrity and purpose. A year and a half later, the new campus of Aura Innovations was bathed in the crisp light of a perfect Chicago autumn. The sprawling industrial chic complex, converted from a series of old brick warehouses, was a testament to Olivia's vision. Gone was the cold, imposing skyscraper that served as a monument to a single man's ego. This place was designed for people. Green roofs, collaborative open-air courtyards, and a subsidized daycare hummed with a quiet, productive energy. William had built a vertical kingdom to be admired from afar. Olivia had cultivated a horizontal community to be lived in. She was walking through the main R&D lab, a space that buzzed with creativity. A recent feature in Wired magazine had dubbed her the conscience of Silicon Prairie, a title that made her blush, but also filled her with a sense of deep pride. She wasn't a coder or an engineer, but she had an intuitive grasp of human-centered design. She stopped at a workstation where a young engineer, Maria, was testing their newest flagship product. "How is the Guardian prototype coming along?" Olivia asked, her voice warm. The Guardian was her passion project, an elegant, non-intrusive home monitoring system designed for seniors living alone. It used ambient sensors and machine learning to detect anomalies in daily routines, a prolonged period of inactivity, and could alert family members or emergency services. It was the antithesis of the diamond-encrusted smart mirror. The fall detection algorithm is at 99.8% accuracy." Maria said, her face alight with excitement. "And we got a letter yesterday from one of our beta testers, an 82-year-old man in Ohio. His daughter lives 3 states away. He said for the first time in 5 years, she stopped calling him 3 times a day, just to make sure he's okay. He said he feels like he has his independence back, and she has her peace of mind." Olivia's eyes welled up slightly. This was the ROI she cared about. This was the metric of success that mattered. That's wonderful, Maria. Keep up the incredible work." This professional fulfillment was mirrored by a personal joy that was deeper and more profound than anything she had ever known. Her life now revolved around a different, much smaller son, her daughter Sophie. That Saturday, her Lincoln Park brownstone was filled with the sweet smell of banana pancakes and the sound of tiny feet pattering on hardwood floors. Sophie, now a curious and determined toddler, with her mother's smile and her grandfather's calm, observant eyes, was the undisputed ruler of the household. Marcus was visiting for the weekend, as he did most weekends. He was on the floor, his suit and tie persona completely gone, replaced by a soft sweater and an expression of pure adoration as he helped Sophie stack a wobbly tower of wooden blocks. "Higher! Grandpa, higher!" Sophie squealed with delight as the tower finally tumbled the blocks, scattering across the colorful rug. Olivia knelt down, placing a plate with a small, syrupy pancake on the coffee table. "Breakfast is served, my little architect." Marcus watched her, a gentle smile on his face. "You know," he said quietly, "when I started the company in my garage all those years ago, I dreamt it would one day build amazing things. But I never imagined the best thing it would ever build is this." He gestured around the room at Olivia, at Sophie, at the warm, happy chaos of their life. "You took the pieces he broke, and you built a real home, Liv, for you and for her. I'm so proud of the mother you are." His words touched her deeply. Her success as chairwoman was gratifying, but her success here, in these quiet moments of love and normalcy, was her true masterpiece. She thought of the life she'd had with William, a life of galas of performance, of maintaining a perfect image in their glass box in the sky. It was a life built to be photographed. This life was built to be lived. Later that week, she was downtown to meet Jessica for lunch. The weather had turned, and the city was bracing for winter. A cold, persistent drizzle fell from a gunmetal gray sky, and the wind whipped off Lake Michigan, forcing pedestrians to hunch deep into their coats. Olivia stood at a busy intersection on Michigan Avenue, waiting for the light to change when a man across the street caught her eye. He was huddled at a bus stop, trying to shield his face from the wind. He was thin, almost gaunt, and his worn, ill-fitting coat looked insufficient for the biting cold. The sharp, custom-tailored suits were gone. The confident swagger replaced by a defeated slump in his shoulders. It took her a full 10 seconds to realize it was William. The change was so shocking it was disorienting. He was no longer a titan, no longer a king. He was just a man stripped of all his power and prestige, waiting for a bus in the rain. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, and for a heart-stopping moment, their eyes locked across the torrent of yellow cabs and city buses. She saw a flicker of everything in his eyes, shock, disbelief, and then a wave of shame so profound it was like a physical blow. He flinched, his face contorting in an expression of raw, agonizing regret. He looked at her healthy, confident, wrapped in a warm coat, the picture of a life well lived, and it was as if he was seeing the ghost of the entire world he had burned to the ground. He broke eye contact first, turning away abruptly and fumbling in his pocket, pretending to look for something. When the bus hissed to a stop, he shuffled on without a backward glance, swallowed by the crowd of anonymous commuters, erased by the mundane rhythm of the city. Olivia stood rooted to the spot, the rain cold on her face. The hatred, the anger she had once felt, was gone. In its place was a vast, empty pity. He had nothing. The divorce had been brutal on him. His blatant mismanagement had allowed the board to enact clawback clauses on his bonuses and stock options. He'd been left with a fraction of his former worth. Serafina had never spoken to him again. His friends had vanished. He was an island, completely and utterly alone. "Liv, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jessica had come up behind her, putting a hand on her arm. Olivia took a slow breath, the cold air filling her lungs. "Something like that," she murmured. Seeing him wasn't a shock of pain, but a quiet moment of finality. He was a postscript to a chapter she had finished reading long ago. He had chased a supernova, a blindingly brilliant existence that was always destined to collapse into a black hole. She had chosen to cultivate a garden, tending to it with patience and purpose, and now it was flourishing beyond her wildest dreams. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a picture message from Sophie's daycare. It was a blurry photo of her daughter, face lit up with a triumphant grin, having just taken her first few wobbly, independent steps. A real, unburdened smile spread across Olivia's face. She looked across the street one last time at the spot where William had stood. There was nothing there now but rain and strangers. He was an echo. Sophie was the future. The crosswalk sign flashed white. Olivia turned to her friend, linked her arm through hers, and walked into the light. And so Olivia Prescott's story comes to a close. But her legacy is just beginning. This wasn't a simple tale of revenge. It was a story about resilience, integrity, and the quiet, unshakable power that lies within those who are underestimated. William Sterling built an emir of glass and ego, and it shattered just as easily. Olivia built an empire of purpose and compassion, and it's one that will stand the test of time, a true legacy for her daughter. She proved that the best response to betrayal isn't to destroy what your enemy has, but to build something better for yourself. What did you think of this incredible story of justice and empowerment? What would you have done in Olivia's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to build a beautiful new beginning from the wreckage of the past. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next real-life drama. Thank you for listening.